Good morning. Happy Monday. It could happen. If you live in South Dakota, Minnesota, maybe into Wisconsin, watch out. It could be rounds of severe weather today. Lots of wind, some damaging wind with that, and maybe even a few tornadoes. So we'll go over that here in just a second. But first, let's take a look at the watches and warnings across the country. A little bit of a wind advisory there for the Columbia River Gorge, Washington, Oregon. When you get into, excuse me, Montana into Wyoming, a little bit of some flooding there, also parts of New Mexico, so possibility. And then our big area of our heat advisories, excessive heat watches, and excessive heat warnings, as that dome of high pressure has expanded into the Midwest and is going to continue to expand eastward. And so, very hot today, all the way from northern Oklahoma into Wisconsin and all the way into Indiana and Ohio for tomorrow. So, watch out for that. Also, down around Miami, pretty hot. Heat advisories there and some flooding concerns down around Jacksonville, Florida. Today's weather spotlight. Sioux Falls, South Dakota. National Weather Service here, letting people know multiple chances for severe storms today. Large 2-inch plus hail, strong damaging wind gusts over 75 miles an hour, a few tornadoes, repeated rounds of thunderstorms. Throughout the day, could be some flooding there with that. And starting early mid-afternoon all the way through the overnight. And so parts of Nebraska and that number 2 risk, but the number 3 risk is really where we're concerned. And that's all the way from Pierre through Brookings up into St. Cloud and Minneapolis and even further east. And we'll see that on the surface map today. Excuse me. So look at that in western Wyoming. That's just south of Yellowstone, maybe parts of Yellowstone in there. Chance of mixed precipitation. There was a little bit of snow in Mammoth Mountain, California yesterday, so it's getting to be that time of year, I guess. But there's your severe weather threat all the way from Wyoming into Michigan. So that swath all through there. And the heavy rain, flash flooding possible, that's in the red underneath that yellow. So that's our danger zone for today. That's on the northern edge of the high pressure. So we've got a disturbance moving through there, a trough moving through there, and also that warm front moving out of Iowa into that. So just all the conditions are ripe for severe weather. Maybe some rain for New Mexico, Colorado, certainly Washington, northwestern Oregon, and then along the Gulf Coast and further to the east. Another area of possible severe weather for Michigan, Rhode Island, Connecticut, maybe southern New Hampshire, parts of New York State. So watch out for that area as well. And here is a closer look at that severe weather. So again, we've got the enhanced risk, South Dakota, Minnesota, into Wisconsin mainly. And so what we're going to see is we're going to see some isolated supercells, and eventually those will combine into one large complex, maybe some bow echo with that, just marching across Minnesota into Wisconsin with a chance for those wind gusts over 75 miles an hour with that. Then again, to the northeast, a small area of a slight risk of severe weather as well, so watch out there. Here's that wind risk. And that 30% wind risk is what we're looking at here. So if we see a complex of storms get together with a bow echo and just march across South Dakota, Minnesota into Wisconsin, could leave a large swath of destructive winds. So watch out for that. But also here's our tornado risk zooming in to South Dakota and to Minnesota. So the 5% risk is from Sioux Falls up to Brookings and almost to Pierre on the west side, moving into central Minnesota. And then the 2% risk is expanded even further, through Minneapolis, St. Paul into Wisconsin. And so watch out these areas today. This is where your storm chasers are going to be as well. Highs today are going to be very high. Not as high, Texas, congratulations, mid-90s instead of 105 or whatever. So the 103s moving up into central Kansas and into Nebraska. That's a 100 for, I don't know, is that Lincoln? Could be 101 for Omaha anyway. And with humidity, so it's going to feel hotter than that. Even mid 90s into Indianapolis, Indiana, Illinois, even into Ohio, up into Michigan, low 90s. So hot for you. And 98 for Nashville, but tomorrow's going to be even hotter. So we'll show you that here in a second. You got to all the way up into New England to get into the 80s. And, cooling off behind that system that's moving into South Dakota. So that's one reason you have that cooler air smashing into that warm, moist air. So 70s for South Dakota, North Dakota, and Montana. Very pleasant indeed. Low 80s for the Willamette Valley of Oregon. Mid 90s, though, Central California. Tomorrow's surface, that severe weather shifts a little further to the east, Wisconsin into Michigan, maybe northern Ohio included. A cold front now moving to where I live, or closer to where I live here in western Iowa. So that'll be a nice relief from the heat. And with that, a chance of some scattered storms. There'll be not a great chance here, but at least there's a chance. And monsoon still on for parts of Arizona into New Mexico. There's a chance of showers along the Texas Gulf Coast and maybe the northern Cascades of Washington into British Columbia with a chance for some snow mixed in. Lows tomorrow morning, starting out on the warm side with that high pressure still in the center of the country. Widespread 70s to start the day from southern Texas all the way up into Michigan. And we see a lot of 60s and 70s further east, 70s to start the day southeast. But to the west and northwest, that's where the cool stuff is. Baker, Oregon, 44. Central Nevada, 43. We see a 47 there. Idaho Falls. So very pleasant, even some low 40s where that area of possibility of some snow mixed in there in western Wyoming. So lows all over the place, and depending on where you are and what's going on, of course. Highs tomorrow kind of reflects the same thing. Where we have a hot start, we're going to have a hot day. So there you go, Nashville, 101 tomorrow, and 100 for Tupelo, Mississippi, 100 for, I think that's Vicksburg, probably 99 Jackson. So hot in Mississippi, and don't forget humidity on top of that. And then West Texas, even a little bit cooler, low 90s. That's manageable. Congratulations again. But those low 90s pushing further north into Pennsylvania and into Michigan still. So, but that cooler air in the Dakotas, filtering a little bit further south. So now Minnesota's starting to cool off behind today's severe weather, and some 80s now getting into western Iowa. That'll be nice. And temperatures on the West Coast, a little warmer for Central California, upper 90s here. Desert Southwest still hot, 108 for Phoenix and for Lake Havasu in Arizona. But kind of cool up there in Washington State. That's nice. Here's your rainfall for the next 2 days. And of course, you would expect a lot of rain all the way from South Dakota through Minnesota into Wisconsin, with today's severe weather, and even tomorrow's severe weather, Wisconsin into Michigan. So that's where our heaviest rain is going to be. Could be approaching and even exceeding 2 inches here in really a widespread area. We see a little bit with monsoon in New Mexico. Not as heavy though, but approaching an inch, inch and a half for some isolated areas here. Also along the Texas Gulf Coast, could see some pretty heavy rainfall, an inch to an inch and a half for some. So that's where your heaviest rainfall is going to be. A quick peek at Wednesday. Severe weather moves further east in the Ohio Valley into Pennsylvania, New York State, Connecticut, parts of New Jersey, even West Virginia, close to D.C. here. And then another round maybe for South Dakota, North Dakota, as our cool front pushes a little further south in the upper Midwest and upper plains. And then you see still monsoon on Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. More showers for Texas, so more people getting into the act, hopefully, and along the Gulf Coast as well. All right, real quick, we're going to take a look at the GFS model here. Here's our GFS. We're starting at noon today, and we're starting to see a little bit here. This is our low, surface low, and we're going to watch this area. It doesn't show it quite as well as I'd like, but especially since we're going in like 3-hour increments. But we do see this area of showers and storms forming in western South Dakota, and then big storms popping up this evening. So again, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, almost down to the Nebraska border. This is where we could see our isolated supercells here, chance of tornadoes with these. And then as we go 3 more hours, you see it's getting its act together a little bit more as those storms get together and start to push off those gusty winds, maybe some bow echoes here marching across Minnesota into Wisconsin as we go through the evening and overnight hours. And then as we get into, this is Tuesday morning, we see some pretty heavy rainfall here near Green Bay in Wisconsin and above and on the Lake Superior. And then that low continues eastward, and our chance of severe weather also goes further eastward. Finally, some, as that cool front pushes into Iowa and eastern Nebraska could see some scattered showers and storms, even into northern Missouri as well with that. And then our severe weather for the east, a chance there as well as we go through the day. Wednesday, here's our heavy rainfall. This is day 3, so our severe weather for the Ohio Valley, we see that popping up here and then relaxing as it heads east. And look at this big low here. This is going to help drive some cooler air into the center part of the country, even though it lifts northeast, so it's not going to be a big push south, but at least we'll get some cooler air across the northern plains and eventually into the Midwest, and we see showers and storms with that as that happens. And this is getting into Thursday night. So Thursday night is our best chance of rain here in Iowa, I know that, and then stretching back into Kansas and even into West Texas. Could see some of that. Some pretty heavy rainfall here too as well for Virginia and North Dakota and into the south as we get into the overnight Friday night and into Saturday morning. We'll take a look at the weekend forecast here in a second, but our 6 to 10 day outlook looks like this. That cooler air making its way into the center part of the country. So, where it's been really hot in Texas, you have equal chances of above or below average temperatures. So the shorthand for that would be near normal for the next 6 to 10 days. And some of that's going to be below average. So, we're starting out a little above average. We're going to end up a little below average. So some relief for eastern New Mexico and Texas. That's nice. And some bigger relief for the Midwest into the northern plains, even the central plains. So that's good stuff. And one reason why is because it's heating up in the northwest. And as that high pressure builds into the northwest, that cooler air dives further to the south as we get into Labor Day weekend. Still hot on the East Coast. Precipitation for the next 6 to 10 days. There you go, Texas. A really good chance for above average precipitation into Oklahoma. And then a pretty good chance of above average precipitation eastern New Mexico, Colorado, stretching all the way through the south and up the East Coast. Dry spots up there along the Canada border and also Canadian border and also in the southwest. And maybe above average precipitation for Northern California, Southern Oregon into Nevada. All right, that's your Monday forecast, looking through the weekend and beyond. I do appreciate you tuning in. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Weather Mic.